In 2004, I was with a team of volunteer humanitarians, Rotarians, immunizing children in India against polio. In 2004, human trafficking wasn't a common topic of conversation. So you can imagine my shock to realize when we ended up at a center for children rescued from slavery that the 50 children around me were all former slaves. At that center, my world turned upside down when I met an 11-year-old girl named Mina. 2 weeks before my team had arrived at that center, Mina had been rescued from enslavement in the circus, where she performed an act called the Star Kiss. Holding a rope in her teeth, she twirled higher and higher to the top of a tent without a safety net below. Had she fallen, she would have been discarded. I also learned later that she had been sold for sex at 11 years old. That encounter led me to learn everything I could about human trafficking, modern slavery, and to do something about it. For the last 6 years, I have volunteered at a local residence for survivors of human trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation, and I currently consult to the Salvation Army's New Day to Stop Trafficking program. I also talk to anyone who cannot run away from me fast enough. When I first began speaking to people right here in my backyard in southeastern Pennsylvania, inevitably someone would come up to me at the end of a program and say, "Now, Carol, when you say human trafficking is here, you don't really mean here, do you?" Yes, it's here. In 2014, I was in Nepal looking at projects and programs for survivors of sex slavery, and I spoke to a group of local businessmen. One man took me back to the guest house, and as we were driving, he turned around and said, "Now, Carol, we know human trafficking is a problem in the United States and in the West, but you don't really mean it's here in Kathmandu, do you?" Yes, it's here. The same words. Yes, it's here. It is extraordinarily difficult to face that human trafficking is here in our beautiful community. But it's here no matter where here is. In fact, it is illegal in every nation of the world, but it exists in every nation of the world. According to the Global Slavery Index, there are an estimated 35.8 million people enslaved worldwide today. They're victims of sex trafficking and labor trafficking through force, fraud, and coercion. What's it worth? According to the International Labor Organization, the illegal profits made from these victims are about $150 billion. $150 billion. Putting that into perspective, that's more than Coca-Cola, Nike, and Starbucks combined revenue in a year. But what is the cost to the victim? Nearly everything. The loss of your face, your name, your voice, your complete identity. This is a real photo, mine, of a real victim, not a model. Walking in a local area known as the place to buy heroin and sex, I stumbled upon this young woman wearing very short shorts and a crop top, standing as though she were pinned against a wall. Her bare feet were in human excrement, used condoms, and dirty needles. She stood stock still, as though she were being held at gunpoint, even though the man who had been talking with her ran away and hid as I approached. I wondered, why didn't she speak out or ask for help? Why didn't she leave or move? In one stomach-churning moment, I grasped the difference between the psychological bonds of sex trafficking and freedom and the difference between her and me. I had freedom of movement. I had rights. I had a friend watching my back. If I heard him threaten her or me, I could have spoken out. My gut was saying, get away from there as fast as you can and get far away. I had a million people I could have asked for help. There were a million places I could go. She had none. Over time, some survivors have told me what it's like being a victim of human trafficking. It may mean that you don't go to a grocery store for 10 years. Who likes to go to the grocery store? You may not have to go to the grocery store for 10 years, but you don't know where that next meal is coming from. You may not have to pay rent or utilities. That's good, right? But you may live in an abandoned building where there's no heat, hot water, electricity. One survivor told me that she called the abandoned building where she lived her abandonminium because it made it sound a little nicer. It means getting savagely, brutally beaten because someone decided you should be hurt. Ultimately, being a victim of human trafficking and deprived of freedom means that you lose the ability to think your own thoughts and to dream your own dreams. In the words of Anne-Marie, a survivor of human trafficking here, when she talked about her trafficker or her pimp, she said, when you're controlled, when he says the sky is purple, you believe him. You know it's blue, but you believe the sky is purple. So what does it mean to regain freedom? It means that you choose when and what you eat. You get paid for a job you choose to do. For an Indonesian woman who had been enslaved here in domestic servitude for 10 years before being rescued, regaining freedom meant getting married. For a boy named Huro in India, who was enslaved making carpets at the age of 6 years old, regaining freedom meant he could grow up and study to become a teacher. Freedom means you decide what matters. Consider this. You and I have the ability, that privilege, of making even poor choices. Next time you make a bad decision, let folks around you know, I am exercising the right to make a poor decision. That bad decision's beginning to look a little better, isn't it? We have that right. I asked survivors if there was one thing that they could tell society, us, and we would listen and heed, what would that be? They did not ask for $1 million to be put in their personal bank accounts. They didn't ask for a limo ride to a fancy dinner where they would be treated like a king or queen for an evening. What they wanted boiled down to 3 things: equality, respect, and compassion. Equality, respect, and compassion. It almost sounds too simple until you consider that equality, respect, and compassion are the conditions under which you and I make ourselves the best we can be in the way we see fit. So how do we put equality, respect, and compassion into action for them? Alina was enslaved in domestic servitude in Haiti as early childhood. Deprived of an education, she didn't learn to read and write. So how do we work for Alina? Advocate for a solid education and for equal rights for all members of our community, men, women, children, locally, globally. Ensure that the workers who make your life better are fairly compensated for the work that they do, whether or not we can see them. That means demanding and buying fairly traded goods. Chocolate, coffee, tea, almonds, tomatoes, citrus, leather soccer balls that our children play with, cotton clothing that we wear every day. Start looking for fair trade labels. Other ways to show respect? What if we began driving with civility? What if we began shopping, even during holidays, with civility? Let's start a ripple of effect, of respect, starting right here with us, moving out to the people we know until it reaches them. One local survivor of sex trafficking was passed around by her brother and his friends when she was in elementary school. By the time she was an older teen, she really didn't understand that she deserved respect and that there was more value to her than just her body. One man sold her for sex, others paid him. How do we begin to show respect for someone like this? We have got to stop buying sex. As a society, we just have to stop. How many of you were told explicitly as a young person, it's not okay to buy sex? Let's dare to start having those conversations. Dare to say it's not okay to buy sex. Other ways of showing respect? Equality. Let's simply turn to the people next to us and begin to treat them as we would have them treat us. Lastly, compassion. Anne-Marie is a local survivor of sex trafficking, and she was raped one day out on the street. She was sitting in the back of a police car with the windows rolled down when she overheard one officer say to another, now remember, she had just been raped, "What's the difference? She's just a whore." Can you imagine how worthless she must have felt? How violated, yet again, she must have felt. For 10 years, she was arrested for prostitution, and no one asked, might she be a victim instead of a criminal? Might she need rehabilitation or recovery instead of reincarceration? When Anne-Marie received compassionate help, she turned her life around. She is now a peer counselor, helping women out of the life that she once endured. Her record is now erased. So how do we expand our compassion? It's already in there. How do we expand it for people like Anne-Marie? Change your mindset. Next time you see a young woman on the street corner, ask yourself, could she be a victim instead of a criminal? Who really chooses to have sex 15 to 30 times a day with a complete stranger, being exposed to untold diseases and terrible, terrible violence? Change your mindset. Other ways, lend a hand to those who are homeless, hungry, and therefore vulnerable to traffickers. Vulnerable to traffickers. Treat those in our society who are marginalized or isolated as though they belong. Because they do. We all belong. I'll leave you with one final story. The first day I was at the New Day Women's Drop-In Center for victims still on the streets, still caught in sex trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation. A victim came in and asked for a pair of socks. I could offer her a meal, a shower, other articles of clothing, help, but we were out of socks that day. Another victim who had come in to rest for a while and most likely had little more than the clothing on her back, bent down, untied her shoes, and offered the socks off her feet. I wondered, would I have shown that generous a level of equality, respect, and compassion? Would you? You don't have to be a saint, a millionaire, or a world traveler to help end human trafficking. If you are a saint, please come see me afterward. I could use your help. We simply need to take the resources that we have and the talents that are already within us and use them to help them regain their voices, their names, their identity. Together, we are extraordinarily powerful. So starting now, working together, let's turn that sky back to blue. Thank you.